On this episode of Still Loading,
What have I got?
hello everyone, and welcome to this new episode of the Still Loading podcast. I am your host, Josh Koval, and today, oh my gosh, it's the return of the Naughty Dog series. I was telling my guest, and I'll introduce you in a second. I was telling my guest that I seem to be only doing this series once a year, and that's got to change. I got to release these more than once a year, because prior to this, it was January 2021 that Uncharted Lost Legacy came out, and it was January 2020 that Uncharted 4 came out. And so that's criminal. Like, it's insane that I waited a full year to continue on with this series that I started. I don't even remember, like 4 years ago, something like that. But we are here today to talk about the first game, not the very first game. It was the first game under the Naughty Dog moniker, at the very least. At least, actually, you know what? Now I'm like second guessing myself. Was it the first game they released under the Naughty Dog moniker? In my Naughty Dog series, I talked about how they were known as, it was Jam Software, Jason and Andy's Magic or something like that. But I don't know if it was actually. Now I'm curious. I'm going on to Wikipedia just to check. It seems like they developed other stuff prior to this under the Naughty Dog moniker, but this is arguably their most important game. So, sorry, with all that said, with all that out of the way, my guest for this episode is my friend Erika from the Monster Madness podcast. Erika, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing very well. Sorry for that crazy long-ass intro, because I just went down a rabbit hole trying to make sure all my info was correct there.
It was nice to watch you spiral, like literally 3 seconds into this.
I know it's less than 3 minutes into the episode, and it's already going down the drain. Oh my goodness! But we're here to talk about the first entry into the Crash Bandicoot series, and you asked for this series specifically because you're a big fan of these games, correct?
I'm a big fan of Crash Bandicoot, though I have learned so much more about Crash Bandicoot since I decided to prep for this episode a little bit, that a whole world has been opened to me. I had no idea that there are so many Crash Bandicoot games.
Yes,
versus
there are
the 4 that I own.
There is only 4 developed by Naughty Dog, but there's a lot because not Activision, EA, I believe, bought the license, and I'm going to double check on that. I believe it was EA, either that or Activision. I cannot remember. But it was, it's Activision. I'm sorry. Yes. Activision owns the license to Crash Bandicoot, and that they bought up that license though after Crash Team Racing in 1999. So Naughty Dog, it became a running joke that Naughty Dog would develop 3 games in a series and then make a kart racer, because they did that with Crash and they did that with Jak and Daxter.
They did.
Thankfully, they didn't do that with Uncharted, and I hope they don't do it with Last of Us.
Could you imagine like a Last of Us like go-kart? Like you just like zoom around zombies and shit?
That'd actually be kind of funny. I'm not going to lie. I wouldn't.
Trademark. I'm going to do that.
I wouldn't hate it, believe it or not. That's kind of funny. But we're here to talk about Crash Bandicoot. So let's dive into some of your memories with Crash Bandicoot. I'll tell some of mine in a little bit. What are some of your Crash Bandicoot memories? Try specifically the first one, but if you go into others, that's A-okay too.
So this came out in 96, I believe. So I was a young little child. This was in the era of when you could rent games from Blockbuster.
Oh, Blockbuster.
The good old Block. My brother was the big gamer. He was 8 years older than me, so he was a teenager. He always, begged my mom to rent video games and all this other stuff. So I remember him renting Crash Bandicoot, and you get it for a week, and he played it hardcore. Now, full transparency, we never actually owned the first one. We owned the second and the third one after this, but I can kind of understand why he didn't want to buy this one, because it's horrendously difficult. I don't know if he ever beat it.
It's a really fucking hard game.
It is shocking to me because, they obviously remade these games beautifully, and I owned the Insane Trilogy on my PS4 and on my Switch, and I play them all the time, and then I rage quit them equally as often as I start them.
Mm-hmm.
So my memories of this was just watching my brother at first, and then this was like the first video game that he kind of like, at least on the PlayStation, because we had had a Sega before, and he would force me to play Mortal Kombat with him, and then would get mad when I would beat him. But this was the first,
as older brothers do.
for sure. This was like the first non-fighting game I can remember playing that like he taught me how to play, and like all the buttons, like, oh, the square does this, the triangle does that, blah, 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 blah. And like telling me what the story is and all that stuff. Even though at this point, I don't even think most people know the plot of Crash Bandicoot. It's just like, oh, this Bandicoot is just jumping, grabbing some fruit looking thing and, trying to save his girlfriend. Those are my first memories of it, is like that. This is the game that I kind of learned how to play PlayStation games on. And then I fell in love with it more once we owned like the second and third game, and we would play those nonstop. We did actually have a demo disc that had like the first level of the Crash Bandicoot on it. And I remember playing that over and over again and getting really pumped for when I knew the next games were coming out. Because it seems like they released a freaking Crash Bandicoot game like every single year.
They
It was great.
Crash Bandicoot was an annual game for the first 6 years or 8 years. Holy crap, actually longer than that. There's like looking even past Naughty Dog from 1996 to 2008, there was a Crash Bandicoot, at least one Crash Bandicoot game every single year.
That's wild.
That's I knew there was a lot, but I did not realize how much there was actually. That's kind of crazy and kind of amazing at the same time.
He's a popular character. And fun fact, bandicoots are real. I had an argument with someone. They're like, that's not a real thing. I'm like, yes, they are. They are a real animal. They look nothing like him, really, but they're real.
I'm looking up like it's a group of more than 20 species. This is from Wikipedia. Bandicoots are a group of more than 20 species of small to medium-sized terrestrial, largely nocturnal marsupial omnivores. So there we go.
I love them.
Long-nosed bandicoot, eastern barred bandicoot, and then there's even stuff that doesn't even have bandicoot in the name. There's the greater bilby, which sounds like a band's name.
That could be our band.
Greater bilby. Oh my god. So my memories to start this off was that Crash was obviously it's a mascot of Sony during this era. It was what Sony used to market and try to beat Nintendo. And I think I saw the commercial as a kid. I know I've seen it as an adult since, but the commercial of Crash standing outside Nintendo of America headquarters with like a truck filled with like CRTs, and he has a megaphone, and he's just blasting. He's just like yelling at Nintendo,
Oh
be
my
like, "Look
God.
at these games!"
I
You know
remember
what I'm
that.
talking about?
Yeah, I remember that now.
That commercial was wild, and it really just once again, I shouldn't say once again, that's the first time I'm saying it, but it just really screamed 90s marketing. 90s
100%.
marketing was the most in your face, insane marketing ever. I was listening to, we talked about this podcast off mic, and we'll probably reference it again later, but Retronauts, they were talking about 90s marketing and how like the 90s were just such like, must have been such a peaceful time. I don't know, I think they were just making a joke, but they were saying it must have been such a peaceful time because all the marketing, that was our way to like get some action, like get a little intense. Like we needed something to like jolt us out of our lull, and it was 90s marketing. And Sega did it, so did Sony obviously with that, but that was one of my first memories with Crash, was that commercial. But I remember going over to my neighbor's house, and he had this game, and I actually remember, I believe my second cousins who like it astounded me I didn't hang out with them more, because where my grandparents live, they literally, the way the the way it was set up is they lived on the same driveway. It was just a long freaking driveway. And I rarely saw them, but they had Crash as well. And I remember I was probably such a little snot. All I would ever want to do is hang out with them so I could play Crash Bandicoot. That seems to be a theme in my life. I did that with my neighbors, not the ones that had Crash, but different neighbors. I did that with my neighbors, and I did that with my cousins, where it's just like I only wanted to hang out with them because they had video games that I didn't have.
It's a valid reason.
I know, but I didn't like them. I just wanted the video games. I do actually like them, but as a kid, you don't really think that way.
Your personality is subpar, but your video game collection is choice.
I know, right? Fuck friends. I can get my Crash Bandicoot fix in.
Exactly.
So I remember that, and then I remember I went to a birthday party, and they had a PS1 set up. And for some reason in my memory, I don't know if this is a correct memory or if I'm right with this. The TV was set up like it was almost like in somebody's mudroom, right? Like we walked in the side of their house, the side door to their house. That was where everyone would enter to go to the party. And then you have there was I feel like there's washers and dryers on the left side, and on the right it was like a closet for coats. And for some reason I remember the TV being in an open spot of the closet. I don't know why it was set up there or whatnot. I'm probably misremembering, but this is the memory that's in my head. And I remember that's where a TV and a PS1 was set up, and we were playing Crash 2, and it just blew my mind. Crash Bandicoot, the concept of it just blew my mind. And going back to play this first one, I remember lots of moments over at my other neighbor's house, the one that did have Crash Bandicoot. And some of these levels, we would always try to see how far we could get. I remember the island that the game takes place on, the islands. And I remember seeing how far one of us could get to it, and looking, I remember some of these bosses now, and huge nostalgia dump back when I was a kid over at my neighbor's house. And I always liked Crash, but as I got older and stopped playing them, I just kind of lost interest, and I never really went back. So I played the first couple. I played 1, 2, 3. Never played Crash Team Racing because I've never been a racing game fan or a kart racer fan. And then I never really played. I remember getting Wrath of Cortex for the PS2 because they were like, it's a new Crash Bandicoot game and it's for the PS2. This is great. We played a little bit of it, but we didn't really give it the time of day. And then I just stopped caring about Crash up until I decided to do research for this podcast.
There you go. I have the Insane Trilogy, like I said, and then I have the fourth one that they just came out with. And I think they actually just came out with another game last year, 2021. They came out with a new.
It's a mobile game. It's called Crash Bandicoot on the Run.
Which
makes sense. It's perfect for the game.
Exactly. It's like one of those Temple Run probably type games.
Pretty much. It's like a Temple Run clone.
There you go. There's so many of those. There's Agent Dash and blah, blah, blah. I love Agent Dash, but we're not talking about it. Yeah, I don't know. I just we were talking a little bit off mic about this podcast, this other podcast, Retronauts. I had recently listened to their Crash episode to kind of just give fun facts in my brain, just because I was like, I played the first one a little bit recently. Full transparency, I've never ever been able to beat this game. It is that goddamn hard.
It's a very difficult game. I played up until a specific level, which we'll talk about in a little bit when we get to the gameplay. But I played up to a specific level, and I could not get past that level. And from there, what I did was I just hit a cheat, and I entered a cheat into C to unlock all the levels. So I just started looking at some of the other stuff. I just was
look at you.
I looked around.
Cheats.
I just didn't consider beating it. I just jumped around. I actually fought the final boss just to see what it was like. Very interesting. Not that hard of a final boss, actually, once you figure it out, but it took me a couple tries to do it. But it was interesting. It's a very hard game. It's extremely difficult.
That's what's interesting about, because I know exactly what level you're talking about, and I know what level I get stuck on, and I'm just like, I cannot get past this. it seems to be like a common theme in Crash Bandicoot games. It's like first few levels are super easy, then it gets unbelievably frustrating, rage-inducing hard, and then it gets easy a little bit. Hard, not as hard as that middle part, and then Cortex to me has always been like an easy boss. They're just like, you have been through enough. So you just gotta hit them with a couple orbs a few times, and then you're good to go. Beat game. Good job.
I would argue that Ripperoo was a harder boss than Cortex.
Ripperoo can suck it. I hated that one. I watched actually because I wanted to see how the damn game ended.
Mm-hmm.
So I watched a walkthrough earlier today, and this guy was so smart. He just got a bunch of freaking masks, and he would wait till Ripperoo got close and just spin when the TNT was like next to him, and just he hit him the last 2 times. I'm like, that's genius.
That
Absolutely
is
genius.
very genius because especially like that fight is just, it's obnoxious. It takes so fucking long to do. It's not fun.
No.
It's not a good, I shouldn't say it's not a good boss. It's very difficult. But all right, so let's dive into this. Let's kind of go into this in earnest now that we've got some of our memories out of the way. Some fun facts. Crash was originally called Willie the Wombat.
Oh,
That
I'm
was
glad
what he
it's not
was.
that.
What?
I'm glad it wasn't that, like, because I would never buy a game called Willie the Wombat.
It's not a good. It was back in the day where I feel like, well, actually we can get into this a little bit right now too. The name of him, he would like his name was, after it was changed to Crash, a lot of the Universal, because this was published by Universal Studios,
Mhm.
and or what's their actual official name? Always forget what their official name of it is, but it's Universal Studios Interactive, I think. And they, like, the producers of the game wanted him to be named like Wuzzle or Wezzle the Wombat. It was not a good name at
Mm.
all. But the he was just Willie the Wombat under his production name, but they chose the name Crash because of the verb. Like, one of the things as a game designer, like, you have to choose a verb set of what are the actions that players are going to do? Like, what's the whole purpose of this game? Like Mario, the verb set would be jump,
Yeah,
jump and run. Crash Bandicoot, he's crashing into boxes, and that's where the name came from. And so they literally named him after part of the verb set, which I think is a really cool thing to do, just from a design perspective, because it puts the game's intent right on Front Street in the character's name.
for sure. So if you could name yourself after your verb set, what would yours be, do you think?
I don't. I've never thought about that. What would be my verb set? Oh my god, it couldn't be anything interesting. It might be like potato.
I was gonna go with, for me, for like sweatpants. Like, that was just
Sweatpants.
yeah.
It's almost like, what is your like, what
Those aren't
vibe is your
even
life
yeah,
constantly? Either
exactly.
I was gonna say like player because I play games, and but that has the social context of being a player, and I'm like, I'm the lead. Like, not only am I the farthest thing from that, but like, I'm not cool enough to pull off saying that I'm a player. You know what I mean?
This is player,
I
Koval,
know,
player.
right? So they named him Crash because of the verb set, because he was crashing into boxes, and they purposely created him because of Sonic, because at the time there was a race by game designers and developers to create mascot platformers. Sonic was huge, because of Sonic, it spawned a whole bunch of others to create mascot platformers. Rocket Knight Adventures, that was like either a possum or something like that. I forget what exactly he was. Uh, but Rocket Knight Adventures, it's a marsupial, like a cute animal that's a mascot platformer. There's a really shitty one called Awesome Possum, and what is it? Awesome Possum beats Doctor something like that. I'm gonna Google that right now. But
There's
that
no
was
such
like,
thing as awesome possums. They terrify me.
I mean,
Fun fact.
well, the possums are great for they eat ticks.
But that was the thing that when I mentioned Retronauts to you earlier, they made it click with me why I loved Crash so immediately, because like we had a Sega at my house and Sonic was one of the big games that we played on our Sega. And so I forget who said it on Retronauts, but he was like, so basically this game is just Sonic 3D from behind.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
was like, holy shit, it really is. And like, I could not get over it. I'm like, Sonic spins, so does he, just in a different direction. We're looking at it from a different POV. He's collecting rings, he's collecting Wampa fruit. I'm like, holy shit. I was like,
I didn't
my
even
mind was blown.
and it's kind of sad that the Naughty Dog basically beat Sega to a 3D Sonic in that essence, because when did Sonic Adventure was, I believe, was like the first true 3D Sonic game, and I'm going to double check when that came out, but I feel like I wonder if maybe it came out in 98, so 2 years after this. I wonder if like one of their original intentions was to do something similar to Crash, and then Crash took it so they couldn't copy it or something. I that's all conjecture. There's literally nothing. That's not even conjecture. That's just a completely random fan theory. But I wonder. But you're right. And the nickname that they gave during development for this, because since you are looking at Crash from behind, they called it Crash's ass.
I like it.
uh it was the Crash ass. What it was the actual thing? I wrote it down, and now I'm trying to remember what it was called. But basically, they just called it Crash's ass because you're just, since you're staring, the camera's behind Crash, you're just constantly staring at his butt. But they designed the 3D model of Crash himself to have no neck because it made it less intensive. There was less polygons needed to render that than it would be to give him an actual neck, which I thought was really clever.
Work smarter, not harder.
That is really the definition of these old PS1 and old like 3 like it, the Naughty Dog specifically with this. There was a note that I wrote down, was that when they brought it to like E3 or whatever, like tech demo thing, whatever showcase it was to show it, there was actually rumors that started going around that everything was faked. Like they thought that it was running off more powerful computers, or that it was a pre-rendered video, because game devs could not believe what what Naughty Dog, excuse me, was pulling off with Crash Bandicoot. And they had to do very, like, the programming for Crash. It took a lot of very specific things about how to cleverly render and load and deload polygons, so that way they could have as much on screen as they did. And that's why actually Crash is a lot of narrow hallways, is that way they could have a lot of detail in those hallways that you wouldn't have been able to get if it was a more expansive game world. And I mean, if you really think about it, it took a long time for any developer to truly create like kind of a more open world style 3D platformer. Like Spyro was the big one, but like Mario 64 was doing it the same year that Crash came out. In fact, like the Naughty Dog team, when they made Jack and Daxter, cited Mario 64 as like a big inspiration for it. So it's like, it's crazy to see like what came, like all the different things that were coming out at the same time. But so even though Crash wasn't it's 3D definitely, but since it's very limited 3D. It's like, what if they did 2.5D in a much better way than they do now? Because like the new Super Mario Brothers are like 2.5D type of thing, where it's still side scrolling, but everything's in 3D. This is 3D, but it's like if you did it a smart way. And I think I like that Naughty Dog, they change up the camera perspectives a lot. They have some levels where you're behind the camera, or the camera's behind Crash. Some levels where Crash is running to the camera, i.e., running away from the boulders. Do those levels bother you at all? I actually like them.
Oh no, I love the chase levels.
As
Like
a
when you
kid, I hated them.
I see, I think I never I remember never having an issue with them. I could never stand the closer you got to the end of the game, where the levels turned to more like a mad scientist like esque type thing.
Yeah.
And I'm just, or when they were the levels that were in the dark and you
Hmm.
only had like a small beam of light, I'm like, this is seemingly impossible. And I'm just jumping into nothing. And then, you hear, no. and then he's gone, falling down a pit of despair.
Those last couple levels are super hard. I actually, even some of the bosses in those science levels are like those science lair laboratory levels are really difficult too. When I was using that cheat code thing, like I mentioned, it was the mad scientist where he throws like the beakers at you or whatever.
Oh yeah, that
Whatnot.
ass.
I hate that fight. I tried a couple times. I was getting so mad. I'm like, I don't understand what I'm supposed to do here. Nothing's really broadcasted all that well.
Yeah.
And I forget how I even had to end up beating him, but like
You jump on the one of the one of the little creatures that comes out of the vials, and then it spits at him.
yeah, well, I jumped on it a couple times and it didn't do anything.
Oh, that's dumb.
And I probably just missed it lightly, but because I was like, oh, this didn't work, so let me try something else. I just got so upset that I couldn't figure out what was wrong. But
That's kind of like fascinating to me when it comes to Crash, because like I was playing it on my Switch, and did you play like the older version of it, or did you play the remake?
I played the older version. I don't have the remake actually.
Oh, okay. Well, you should get on this, sir. But I only have the remakes, and I did actually watch the walkthrough as the older version because I kind of wanted to compare the two. I lost my train of thought. It's gone.
Were you going to talk about the difficulty between the two?
That's a great question. This is what happens when you don't talk to adults for a while. You get excitable and then you just forget all your thoughts. But fuck, what was it? I had something, but I actually had a question for you while you were talking about that. So maybe it'll come back to me. But we'll answer my question first. So like a game like Crash, and just any like popular game that kind of has a huge. What do you think makes a game like Crash so popular to people? Because like it does kind of seem like a Sonic-esque game now that that's really blatant and pointed out to you. Like, why do you think people were drawn to something like that, where they're just like, this is the game of like a generation. This is full of nostalgia, where there's really great games, but they're so unknown. They don't get the same type of recognition. Like, what do you think makes a game get recognition to this level? Because if you think about Crash, I remember what I was going to say. There is really like no directive. It's like, okay, you're supposed to break these crates. You're supposed to collect these gems. You're supposed to collect, these tokens that have your girlfriend's face on them, or Cortex's face, or the, engine's face, or whatever. But there is really no like big plot that tells you like, oh, so you're just an experiment. You're supposed to do this. You're supposed to kind of just save the world. You're made to destroy. You were supposed to be a science experiment that Cortex wanted you to dominate the world. That's all you get. You get that one little snippet. Like, how does a game with very little guidance and extreme difficulty and extreme frustration, how do you think it gets so popular that it spins off into there is an annual game for like how many years? 12 years, I think you said.
It was
Even
like
though,
it was 6 or 8 or something like that. It
yeah,
went from 1996 to 2008. Oh, actually, yeah. So like 12 years. You're right. Actually, now that I
boom,
think
math.
about it, I was like, it couldn't have been 12 years, but no, 2008. So yeah, 12 fucking years. That's wild.
Yeah,
Uh,
what do you think is like the perfect recipe that makes a game like that so popular? Because this game is frustrating as hell, and I actually don't even know how my brother would have even wanted to play a sequel to this, having played it recently myself.
I think part of it is a big factor is luck, just because you don't know what's going to hit and what's going to miss. But besides that, if we take the luck factor out and just like what's the parts that are more intentional, one, marketing. Sony marketed this game to hell and back because it was a very technically impressive game for its time, technically impressive for the PS1. So they obviously wanted to push that and market it. Since it is technically impressive, that's going to be appealing to some people. It's the biggest and best game. It's like when you see, like even now, like think of it this way, like the new Horizon Zero Dawn either just came out or is coming out or
It
something like
just came
that.
out, yeah.
Just came out, and there's literally people talking about how you can see peach fuzz on Aloy's face because the actual hair, not peach fuzz, that makes it, but you get what I'm saying, like her actual like facial hair that the little peach fuzz like hair that's growing out of her face. You can see that rendered.
I saw that. Yeah.
Oh, there was some fucking incel who was like, "Why does she have a beard?" I'm like, the best quote sheet was "Tell me you've never been close to a woman without telling me you've never been close to a woman."
I saw that exact meme. I was
it
like,
made me laugh so hard. I was like, "This dude's so."
Does this man not realize that you have people have hair on their face?
And literally, like, as weird as I mean, it's just because we're not used to it with our Western ideals, like, or at least American, like, some women do get facial hair. It's not,
For sure.
and especially doesn't like doesn't that have an increased chance during or after pregnancy or something like that?
I can confirm or deny nothing.
Fair enough. But so I think the technical aspect is definitely appealing.
Josh,
to
we have to stop this podcast. I have to go shave my face. Where's my Barbasol?
I will make sure to Amazon one to you.
Thank you so much.
Just for that. But no, I feel like the technical aspect is definitely appealing. I think in terms of people who don't give a shit about the technical prowess of a game developer or how good a game looks at the time, I think a lot of it has to have a solid gameplay premise, which it's Sonic from behind. Sonic is a good game, and therefore it has a decent gameplay premise. I think the world that Crash builds is really interesting. Like visually, it's a very visually appealing game. I'm not even talking about graphics. I'm talking about art design. I think it's a visually appealing aesthetic, both like besides just the visuals, the music, all the sound effects. Like it creates like this universe that you can kind of get lost in a little bit just by naming things. Like there's different islands, and even though you know nothing about the world around you through the gameplay at the very least, or very little about the world around you through the gameplay at least. I mean, maybe there's more and I'm just not picking up on it, but it creates that sense of like there's more to this world than what I know, which is always interesting to people. And also remember, this is the era when manuals were actually important. Like you had to read a manual sometimes in order to get the story of what's happening. And this was kind of at the shifting point where you didn't necessarily always need to read a manual in order to understand what's happening, but there is still like this is still the era of gaming where that is a thing, where manuals are needed. So like the plot of this, like you wouldn't know. I want to read this straight off of Wikipedia. All right. Cause I have the game somewhere here, but I don't want to get up from the mic and go grab it. The plot from Wikipedia says, in a secluded archipelago 300 miles west of Tasmania, the mad scientist Dr. Neocortex uses his Evolvo ray to genetically alter the local wildlife into an army of soldiers for the purpose of world domination. Among these soldiers is an eastern barred bandicoot named Crash, who Cortex selects to be the general of his army. The day before Crash is subjected to the quote-unquote Cortex Vortex, a machine intended to brainwash him, he becomes attached to a female bandicoot named Tawna. Crash is rejected by the Cortex Vortex and is chased out of Cortex's castle, plummeting to the ocean below. As Cortex prepares Tawna to be used in Crash's place, Crash washes up on a smaller island and resolves to rescue Tawna and defeat Cortex. He is aided in his mission by Aku Aku, a witch doctor spirit who acts as the guardian of the islands. And there's 2 more paragraphs, but I think that's a pretty good synopsis of what all that happens there. It's well written by whoever this Wikipedia author is. But
Erika Gwynn.
Yeah. But you don't need to know any of that. Like that
No,
I think
don't.
the brilliance of it is like you don't need to know all that. And with that said, it very much reminds me of Sonic again, because Sonic's plot is very loose to start, and now there's all these crazy characters. And I know the games haven't always fared well critically, but they're very popular amongst his fan base. And I've never beaten a Sonic game. Isn't that sad?
I've only beaten a Sonic game on my Switch, and it's because you have a reverse capability.
Save states in reverse, yeah.
Yeah, and if I didn't have that, I would never be able to. They are also extremely frustrating and nearly impossible. So this is what amazes me about like hardcore gamers is like they have this ability that I will never have, and it's just, I guess, to be good at playing video games. But like I can't just sit and beat a Sonic game without that ability. But this guy I watched in a walkthrough because I was like, how do I beat this fucking thing? He just did it just easily.
I think there's something you have to keep in account. I'm not even saying this to be nice. We have we have responsibilities outside of this. So unless I feel like gaming as an adult is so different, because as a kid, you just have time to burn. Like you can get mad at something and keep going. But as an adult, like we might only have 2 to 3 hours to play a day if we're lucky, right?
That's so generous.
That I have that because my kid thankfully goes to bed super early, so I have 3 to 4 hours every night. But I also I have chores to do. I have podcasting and whatnot to do. But
Adulting.
the other adulting stuff. Well, the podcasting is for fun, but still, you get the idea. So if I'm playing a game though for fun, I want to get some progress in. So if I'm spending if I die like 5 or 6 times to the same thing, I get frustrated because it's like, no, I need to progress with this because I only got another hour before I got to go to bed or before I have to go do something else. So I feel like it's not necessarily that you're bad at gaming, it's that you don't have the patience anymore to get good at gaming. And that's not to say you can't get that patience back. It's just that as an adult, your patience for stuff that's not important is a lot lower. And as much as I love gaming, it's not as important as taking care of my kid. Like you are, I guarantee you're a parent as well. I guarantee you are significantly more patient with your kid over the most boring, tedious things because you have to be.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to be patient with video games because they don't fucking matter. I love video games, but they don't. But in the grand scheme of things, as an adult, unfortunately, we have to put it on the back burner. And I feel like with games like this, games that are so relentlessly difficult like this is, that's where that comes from. It's not that you're actually bad; it's that you just don't have the time or the patience. Maybe you have the time, but no longer the patience to get good. And if you do have the time, it just sucks because that means you have to, you might spend a couple gaming sessions, your precious few gaming sessions that you have, on the same area, and that doesn't sound like a lot of fun.
I like that explanation better than me just being bad at things.
I mean, you could be, but I'm gonna choose to believe the other one.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
You're welcome. Some other fun things, since we kind of talked about the story of this as well. Tana, Crash's girlfriend, was based off of Pamela Anderson, which does not surprise me.
Well, she's a hot button topic right now, so
what's going on with her? I don't know. Is it that Pam and Tommy documentary or something?
Yeah, that ridiculous TV show that I just won't watch.
I didn't. Was that it? Is there something else?
Yeah, that's it. That's like they literally have propelled themselves back into, mainstream media with their salacious story, which apparently it's a really messed up story. I don't know anything about it, but I'm just like, I completely forgot about the existence of them until I saw it plastered all over my like Amazon Fire Stick as like ads and stuff like that. Like, hey, have you watched it yet? Have you watched it yet? Have you watched it yet? No, because I don't want to
watch this. Stop
I would
pushing this
rather watch a show that I've watched 8,000 times. Put on Ted Lasso for the 15th time before I will ever watch that.
Ted Lasso is just the most wholesome thing in the world. Who wouldn't want to put Ted Lasso on for like the 50th or 60th time?
I grow my mustache specifically for Ted Lasso.
I mean, I know I haven't seen you for a few years. Actually, we didn't even talk about it at the top of the episode. It's been almost 2 years since you were last on the podcast. It's been a while.
It's been a while. No. Yeah, I think, what was it, Metal Gear Solid 2?
Metal Gear Solid 2, yeah.
What a different course we're on right now. Metal Gear Solid 2, Crash Bandicoot.
I know, right?
Eclectic. That's what that's called, eclectic.
But let's dive into some of the levels here. Let's talk about some of the levels, and then
fine.
Actually, no, one final fun fact, and let's talk about some of our favorite levels, and we can talk about some of the more frustrating ones as well. One final fun fact, just to show once again how amazing of a dev Naughty Dog is. One of the tricks that they used to get this game to look as good as it did for its time was they put all the game data the game data in terms of storage space took up a lot less of the disk than you would think. The vast majority of they basically put a giant fucking file physically at the center of the disk. Like, I know that sounds weird, but if you think of a CD-ROM, they put a big file in the location, like the physical location of where that file was stored on the disk was at the center, and it like took up, let's say, like even half, like going out to in. And the reason they did that is because since the disk spins faster on the outside of the disk, it spins faster. There's more RPMs that are going to happen on the outside layers, not layers, but the borders of the disk. That'll help the load times because it'll scan by it that much quicker. So they put all the game data on the outer edges of the disk so it would load faster.
Interesting.
That blew my fucking mind. I always find that interesting where it's like I'm somewhat technically savvy, but when you tell me like how a game interacts with a system hardware and talking about like assembly language and all that bullshit, that's way over my head. When you can break it down as simply as saying like the physical location, something that I could visually see, that it seems like such a simple solution or such an elegant, simple solution to a problem. And I'm just very like, I find that amazing. I don't know. I find that really interesting.
In the words of Jesse Pinkman, science, bitch.
I have not seen Breaking Bad, believe it or not.
That's fine. You could just see that one clip.
That's probably all ever.
You knew what it was from, though. That's what's important.
It took me a second. I was like, Jesse Pinkman, I know that name. I tried watching the first like 8 or 9 episodes and I hated it.
Did you say 8 or 9 episodes?
Yeah.
You got that deep and you're just like, I cannot. That's a valiant effort.
Well, I mean, like some shows, but everyone keeps telling me that it got good after the first season. Like the first season was slow, and then everything after that was like, that's when everyone says it gets really good. I'm like, that's 26-hour-long episodes. You really expect me to waste a day of my life just to hope that I'm going to like the second season? Are you fucking crazy?
I am a firm believer if like in any type of, consumption of like whether it's a book or a band or TV show, movie, etc. If you don't vibe with it, off, close the book, move on. You don't have to, one, like everything, B, finish anything if you don't like it. Like I try that. I do that with books all the time. Like I'll get like halfway through it. I'm like, this is painful for me to get through. I cannot, like, this is actually a fun fact currently in my pandemic life. In my office when I'm working from home, I have a TV to my left because it's like a playroom office, whatever. And I have music on sometimes, or I put on a show that I watch. I was talking to my cousin about Smallville, and I was like, wow, I used to really like that show. I put it on in the background noise, and then next thing I know, like 7 seasons into it, I'm like, this show got so bad, and I was so close to the end. And I think she genuinely got annoyed with me because I was like, I can't finish it. Like, I can't just complete it. She's like, you have to. You're so close. I'm like, nah, it just sucks. And
you don't owe it to anybody to finish it. Like, who do you owe? Like, you don't owe the public to finish it. Like, why?
Yeah, this show ended like 10 years ago, too. Plus, this was in the era where every single season was 24 to 27 episodes long. And like you said, hour-long episodes. I'm like, that's a long-ass time for me to sit here. How many fucking freaks of the week can Superman really run into before he's like, I am the common thread here. Like, clearly there's a problem.
I should remove myself from the situation.
There's another dude who has kryptonite who's trying to kill me. Weird. So I just shut it off, and now I just put on whatever. But it's just like one of those things where you just got to close it, move on. I loved Breaking Bad. I thought Breaking Bad was a great show, but it is a slow burn. If you're not into slow burns, you're not going to like it. Something like Ted Lasso grabs you immediately.
I mean, he's just so wholesome. Jason Sudeikis, man. So good.
It's lovely.
But okay, so let's talk about the levels here.
Mhm.
Some of my favorite levels, like you were saying, like the opening levels are just really well designed. I just
Yeah.
really like how it teaches you all, like you use every bit of Crash's verb set in that first couple levels. I mean,
Yeah.
a good game would do that, but it's just like they throw a lot of different things at you in a really fun, easy way. They show you a lot of the different types of boxes you'll encounter. You'll see TNT boxes. I don't know if they show you nitro boxes. They don't. I don't think
Nitro
there's any
isn't in the
nitro.
first one.
I didn't think so either. I could have sworn they added it to the Nitro was a really smart addition. We'll get to that when we get to the second game,
For sure.
inevitably whenever we record it next. But
Next
uh
year. Next
yeah.
January.
No, we're gonna do it sooner. I
Okay.
can't
All right.
I can't wait another year for another Naughty Dog episode. Can't do it, damn it. But I really like those first couple levels. And believe it or not, I actually really like the third level, the Great Gate, because it's the first one that switches over to 2D. And I really like it. It really just encompasses everything. It's a tough level though.
Mhm.
Like a lot of the 2D stuff is super hard. No, it actually levels. It was the first one that I really ended up not liking, even though as a kid I think I enjoyed it. The ones where you ride an animal, like Hog Wild.
I enjoyed those the most, I think, because, like, in the first one, do you ride? Yeah, you do ride a hog. So Hog Wild is probably one of the I feel like okay, so Crash, I feel like they made the first one as difficult as possible without, like, making it impossible. Like, yeah, you could beat the game, but it's gonna take you a while. I don't know any person who's just like, "Oh, yeah, easy, beat it in an hour, whatever." Not without, like, you put in hours of your life
Mm-hmm.
doing that. Because, like, when I was watching the walkthrough, my bro, I wish I remembered the YouTube's name, he had 67 lives, and he got to that, bridge episode,
Bridge to
oh,
Nowhere.
Bridge to Nowhere, and then there's one called High something. What do you see it on the list? It's,
I'll look it up. Oh, the High
yeah,
Road.
the High Road. Because I got through the first bridge one.
I
It took me a
couldn't even
while.
get through. Though fun. I was bad at it, but if you're good, you can walk on the ropes.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna tell you. The ropes are your best friend in those levels. But so with Crash, you have to know the little tricks. You have to know, and your timing has to be impeccable. You cannot be off at all. And what is interesting, I cannot remember how sensitive the original gameplay was for the first one, but in the Insane Trilogy, they made it even more sensitive. So, like, if you get close to an edge, they made it so sensitive, like and put legit physics. Like, if an actual bandicoot that was this weight got this close to the edge, he's going to slip off and fall. So it's even harder in the Insane Trilogy.
I've heard that. I heard that the Insane Trilogy, it's not that they, changed anything. It's not like they tweaked the difficulty inherently. They tweaked the physics, which made it more difficult. Which
Rage
it's
inducing.
it's frustrating. I remember trying to play it. A perfect example. My brother has the Insane Trilogy, my younger brother. I played it a little bit over there, and I couldn't get past the first level. I was like, I used to be good at this game. What happened? I plopped in my PS1 disc and my PS3 and streamed it. Beat the first couple levels, no problem,
Yeah,
no issues. I was like, what the fuck? Like, what's going
exactly.
on here? And it's literally just the newer games are harder. Like the physics are different, and it's still a good game. It's the physics are a lot different than what the original was. And I think even though I haven't played the game in years, my muscle memory was still attuned to that of something 20 plus years ago.
Oh, for sure. So this dude in the stream or the walkthrough that he put on YouTube, he got to High Road. He had 67 lives. By the end of it, he had 15. And that's how that's how hard that level is. I So on my PS4, I got to High Road and I was super proud of myself because I had gotten through so many trials and tribulations. I felt like I had gone through Erika's Inferno to get to that point. We
Hmm.
were in the seventh circle of hell. When I beat that level after numerous times of just dying over and over again, literally game over from fucking Uka Uka. I think I laid on my floor after I beat that level for 15 minutes and just like stared at the ceiling because
Was
I
this when
was
you were playing in preparation for this?
no, this was when I first got it on PS4 because I didn't even get that far on my Switch but without getting frustrated.
Yeah.
The level I never ever got past is called Slippery Climb, I believe. It's a level where it's like downpouring rain, you're kind of climbing up the side of this castle, and there's these little assholes that reach out their arms and grab your legs and kill you. And if you don't pay attention, you can't see where they are. And it is the most infuriating level I have ever played in any game whatsoever. I've never been able to get past it. I've never been able to beat it.
I always find it interesting how like there's there's certain games where it's just like even if you don't beat it, like you can talk about it like as if you did because it's so it's kind of tangentially connected, but it's like this game is so difficult that it's like once you run into that thing, you understand the frustration for the entire game.
Mhm.
Doesn't matter what's everyone's skill level is different, so like you get to a certain spot and maybe one spot is more difficult for you, or like you got farther than I couldn't beat that stupid fucking road to nowhere level. I gotta hate that level so much.
I remember watching your stream for a few minutes one night, and you were doing that. And you're like, "Oh my god!" Just
I was getting so mad at it. There's actually, I have to send you a second video now. There's a video, someone did a speed run of this at Games Done Quick, 100%ed the game in an hour and 20 minutes.
that person is not a human being. That is a humanoid. No.
And that
No.
means they broke every single box. They got all the crystals, all the different gems, and all that good stuff. They did everything. It's just crazy.
That's no. There's an infamous story amongst my friends of me when we were in college. Cause I've never been like a big person who's like, let's go to the house party. Like I've just never been that person.
Mhm.
I like to sit in my friends' houses, watch movies, play video games, just chill. Like I said, my verb is sweatpants. Like
Sweatpants.
I don't want to do the things. I don't like going to a bar, whatever.
My verb is pizza. I've determined.
There it is. Oh,
just pizza.
I thought no, I want pizza. But I remember one night we didn't have anything to do. I think the weather was like super crappy, so we were over at my buddy Chris's house. And Chris, if you're listening, what up, man? And he had a PlayStation 1 and PS1, and he set it up. He brought it downstairs from his room, and he had the second Crash Bandicoot. And I was like speed running that thing without knowing I was doing it. I was just going through it, complete muscle memory, got to the final boss and died. And the rage I felt, I think I had to walk out of his house. They talk about how I freaked out because I had gotten so close and had did it so fast. Like everybody was like, it was like me and like 3 other friends. It wasn't like a crowd behind me like chanting on. But it was just like a so engrossing experience, and it was such a fun night. And then the rage I felt, like I almost wanted to break his PS1. I didn't, but it was a close call. And if he's listening to this right now, he's probably pissing his pants laughing because he brings it up to me still to this day. And this was like 15 years ago. He's like, remember that time you freaked out? I'm like, yes, Chris, I remember that time I freaked out because
I was there.
I still feel the anger. The flame still burns.
It's always funny how it's like it's something that you're like kind of over, but if you decide to dwell on it, you'll get mad at it again.
It's like PTSD. Like I have purchased these games multiple times because I love them that much and they bring me so much joy, but they bring me an equal amount of anger, and it's almost like an abusive relationship. It doesn't make any sense. Why I want to hurt myself over and over again. I was playing like a little bit earlier today when my kids were napping. I was like, oh, let me just start a new game, whatever. And like I'm going through it and I'm just getting pissed off. And I'm like, why did I agree to this? Like, this is just dumb. Like, why this fucking game? And I just like put my Switch away and I actually started playing a different game. I started playing the new Pokemon that came out because.
Ooh, Arceus.
Yes.
Arceus. Everyone likes it a lot.
It's fun. It's really fun. I have complaints, but it's fun.
The entire month of April here on Still Loading has been sponsored by Geek Guild. Geek Guild is your go-to store for all of your geeky needs. From video games to home decor, they got a little bit of everything to satisfy your geeky pleasures. And this week, it seemed fitting for this episode to highlight their TNT and Nitro throw pillows from Crash Bandicoot that you can buy for $24.99. So go to geekguild.com and check out everything that they have to offer. I feel like your description of that though is like this really encompasses this game. The first Crash Bandicoot, I think the second and third one is much more well balanced. It's a lot more fair. I remember also liking the aesthetic of the second and third one more, like how there's these hub rooms and you can go to all the different levels that way instead of like walking around this. It created like that. It created a bigger sense of world for some reason as a kid to me. But this first one, the islands are really cool, but it's a little frustrating that when you lose all your lives, it doesn't like I don't mind starting at the back of the beginning of the level, but like the save points to save in this game, I don't know if they did it different in the Insane Trilogy, but on this original game, you can only save at bosses. And if you find the hidden extra level, or if you find the bonus level in the game, which I think you have to get like the 3 different
Tana coins.
You have to get the 3 like different Tana tokens or whatever.
Yeah.
And then it lets you, then you have to beat a bonus level, which are pretty difficult because it's 2D side scrolling, but since it's in a 3D plane, there's no wall behind you, so you can just fall off and you lose that bonus level, which is fine. You don't lose a life, but you lose the ability to save. And so there was a couple times where I think I got up to the bridge to nowhere, the level I kept dying on, right? Road to nowhere. And I could not, for some reason, I couldn't get all the Tana tokens in the previous levels. And so every time I would die, I would go back to Ripperoo, have to fight Ripperoo again. You save right before the boss, not after you beat it. So you have to fight the boss again. And then you have to go through the same 2 levels that I've played like 4 or 5 fucking times now just to get back to the road to nowhere. And I would get like 18 lives by that point. And I'd lose them all because it's a fucking hard level. And I was just that's what was making me the most mad. It wasn't the fact that Road to Nowhere is infuriating enough as it is, but the fact that it kept backtracking me to before the boss, and then I'd have to refight the boss and redo the levels again and again. I just it's very much like an old NES style where it's like if you die, you go back to the beginning of the stage, or you go back to the beginning of the area, and you have to fight through all the levels again. It's obnoxious.
Yeah, they fixed that 100% in the Insane Trilogy. It has autosave after every level. You're good to go. Like I think even the creators were just like, you know what? We tortured these people in 96, so we're going to make this a really difficult game and make physics like a terrible, terrible thing. But we're going to let you have autosave. And also, if you're really bad, we're just going to keep giving you Aku masks over and over again because, you know, we pity the fool. And like, I feel like every time I play this first game and then I think about the second and third one, I'm just like, did they just hate the fans of Crash Bandicoot? Like, they didn't even have fans yet, but did they like hate any like gamers? Did they hate us? Because this game is so infuriating. Like, I cannot stress it enough. And yet people were like, I cannot wait for the second one, to the point where like that my memories are mainly of the second and third one because the first one is just too impossible.
Yeah, I do think I feel like I also remember they base the need for a sequel based off the sales. So the first one sold super well. So based off those sales, it's not like you had the internet to get a pulse of what everyone was saying. Critics gave the game good reviews. People liked the game, so therefore it sold really well. So like the only thing there's still feedback that you can get from the community, but it's not like they could have gone on Twitter and realized this game's fucking stupid for how hard it is.
Yeah.
And like ruined it. No, that's just how, that's just what it sold well. So like, oh, it sold well, let's make a sequel. And there you go, you get a sequel. And then once the sequel sells well, it's like, okay, so this is actually working. This format works. So I feel like they didn't necessarily know how difficult they made it. There's a thing I actually was listening to. We keep shouting them out, Retronauts. I was listening to an old Retronauts episode, and they interviewed this guy named oh my god, Ron Gilbert. I couldn't think of his name. He's Ron Gilbert's super fucking important to the game industry. He's the guy who created the Secret of Monkey Island games.
Oh yeah.
He's the writer and designer for those. He worked at LucasArts, so he did Maniac Mansion, and he did I think he did Day of the Tentacle. He more recently, the episode was an old one. He was doing Thimbleweed Park, which has been out now for a couple of years. It was advertising Thimbleweed Park for him. But he was talking about how, like, when you are designing a game, you need to, when you're play testing it, when you're testing a game, when you're having someone play test, it's important for you to be there watching him or her play the game, because and not say anything. Watch them struggle through it almost as a punishment to you, because you know how to do it. And so it's one of those things where I'm not saying they did bad play testing by any stretch of the imagination, but especially with that first game, it's very hard to know exactly what people are going to and not get, what are they going to get stuck on and where they're not going to get stuck on. They can test as much as they can, but until it goes out to the the public at large, you will never know entirely. And I feel like that's one of the reasons why games like the second game in most series is much more well refined than the first one, because they take everything they learn. And games now, it's not quite the same because we have the internet now, so it's so much easier for game devs to be able to see like almost immediately and then make updates to the game live type of thing, So I'm actually curious. I was wondering what he did. Thimbleweed Park was his most recent one, and then he did a Thimbleweed Park mini adventure in 2020. So that's actually the last two games that Ron Gilbert has done. But like listening to him talk about his theories on like game design was super fascinating. Like I could listen to a whole podcast to him just talking about game design theories and like what's good design versus bad design and fair versus not fair. It was super interesting. But I feel like with this first Crash Bandicoot game, is they Naughty Dog's a good developer, so they play tested it well, but especially back then, I feel like there's only so much you could have done with the first game. And then once they learned all the lessons from the first game and like where the pitfalls were, no pun intended for Crash Bandicoot, but where all the holes were, that's when they could patch it up and be like, okay, here's how we can make the second and third one better. So like the first game, I think, is really good. It's a really great game, and I think more importantly, the difficulty is a huge turnoff, but I think what it does better, and I referenced this when you were talking about like why did this game succeed despite not having much of a story, despite being super difficult. I think the aesthetic is just super strong. They made a really fun world that players want to explore. It's a silly, colorful, fun game. You have an interesting world built, interesting cartoon comic world built. And I mean, it's a funny game too. I mean, at the end of the game, once you beat the game, it does like an epilogue thing and tells you what everyone's doing. So like Papu Papu, who was the I think the tribal chief or the first boss of the game, he sells the remains of Cortex's castle to a resort developer and uses the proceeds to open a plus-size clothing shop.
Nice.
Ripperoo undergoes intense therapy and higher education and authors a well-received book discussing rapid evolution and its consequences. Koala Kong moves to Hollywood, becomes a film actor. Pinstripe, who was kind of like the mafioso alter ego, opens a sanitation company in Chicago. That's really fucking funny, and prepares for a gubernatorial campaign. That is so funny. I mean, that's such a mobster thing, right? Like, you get the sanitation company and then like get into politics. And then Brio, the mad scientist dude, just rediscovers his a love for bartending. And it's like it's stuff like that where it's like that's such a goofy, funny thing to do, but it works really well for the world that it creates. And I just feel like they created a really good aesthetic to fit this game around. And I feel like that's one of its biggest selling points, because when you like, the Crash Bandicoot aesthetic when you see it, like when you see like the text from the logo, like it has a very distinct vibe to it, kind of like how when you see something is very inherently Mario-esque, or something is very
Mhm.
um trying to think of another really strong aesthetic, like Sly Cooper, maybe, even, I don't know, just stuff like that, like something where it's like this feels like something like Crash Bandicoot. They built a world where like you could see something else that's not related, be like, that feels like that would belong in a Crash Bandicoot game, because its aesthetic was so strong.
No, I fully agree. Like, even when you open like the Insane trilogy, at least, like they do like an intro, and I think it's like Activision presents, and like immediately as soon as you hear that voice, I'm like, that's Crash Bandicoot. Like down to the music, like the
It was almost the presentation in that they made it a very kind of like showman style like event.
yeah, you can fully pick it out of a lineup very easily, and I think that's amazing. And I do agree that like the developers did an incredible job, because I'm trying to think of like other game, not like trilogies, because it's not technically a trilogy anymore, because there is now 4 games, but even though the fourth one
Well,
is
there's a lot more than 4 Crash
I'm
Bandicoot
talking
games.
about the important ones here. Um but like the second and third one, because like the first one is, I would say, my least favorite, just because it is so difficult, and I played it the least too, but it has such nostalgia for me. Like I love the character, I love the world that's built around it, I love just that that cartoony caricature-ish, like, bad guy, the big headed evil scientist. It's fun, and it could be relatively mindless. Like, you can pick up Crash Bandicoot and play a few levels prior to getting completely and utterly frustrated, and have fun, and then like move on. I love games like that where I don't have to like fully invest myself in like this 15-minute long dialogue, or read every prompt that someone says, or listen to this, that, and the other. That's why I think I love games like Sonic, because I can pick it up and do like, Emerald Hill real quick, or whatever, just to get that nostalgia that I want to taste real quick, and then just move on with my day or whatever. I love that about games like that.
I feel like specifically with Crash as well, and I know you're a big fan of this too. It or you're a big fan of cartoons, is what I'm getting
Yes.
at. It's the first game that I can think of, and I'm sure it's not the first ever, but I think it's arguably the first popular one that really felt like a cartoon come to life.
Yes.
And because there's other stuff, there's NES and Super Nintendo games that have like really expressive faces and features. I mean, like Earthworm Jim on like the Sega Genesis kind of felt like this too, but
Yeah.
it doesn't feel the same. And I don't know if it's nostalgia talking for me or whatnot, but like when you look at Crash and you see like the craziness, the over the top. Actually, you know what? I don't even think Earthworm Jim would do this, or like other games of that ilk would do it as well as Crash, because there's no voice acting in that. There's
Yeah.
minimal stuff, but nothing compared to what obviously was in the Crash Bandicoot games, because they could do it. They had the tech to do it on the PS1.
Yeah.
Uh, but like Cortex feels like a Yosemite Sam Elmer Fudd esque,
Mhm.
whatever, what pick your Looney Tunes villain esque character. And Crash Bandicoot's so expressive. He's like a silent Bugs Bunny or
Yeah.
something. You know what I mean? Like it very much feels almost like it's so colorful, it's so cartoony that it feels almost like a Warner Brothers cartoon come to life. And it shows with all the different death animations. When Crash like gets crushed, he'll walk around with just a pair of shoes flopping around.
Yeah.
Like it has a really cartoon violence Looney Tunes esque vibe to it. And I can't think of a game that really pulled off that aesthetic so well, so perfectly before this. I'm sure there's something, like I know I mentioned Earthworm Jim, but there's games like that on the Super Nintendo and Genesis that probably did something what Crash did, but I feel like the with the advent of voice acting and like the full on 3D facial animations and all the crazy different things that could happen in the game, I really feel like Crash solidified that. And kids like cartoons. I feel like it's not something that a lot of people saw at the time. Now there's tons of games that are super silly and over the top and just like ludicrous. But like Crash, there's other games that were silly back then, but this one is the first one I really felt like this is a cartoon that came to life. And I obviously the graphics aren't quite as good as what you would see in an animated cartoon,
Yeah.
but the emotion was there. Like I remember looking into some info about when they were designing Crash, they had to, I forget what they had to do, something that was like either outside the norm or like kind of break the game engine in order to allow Crash to have bizarrely expressive facial features, like to exaggerate his face, have big smiles, make him shrink down into small things when he gets crushed, or expand a lot if he gets blown up, stuff like that. Like
Hmm.
they had to do stuff to make his face much more animated than they would have otherwise. um so I really feel like Crash Bandicoot was the reason I think overall it hit off is because it nailed that cartoon aesthetic. Like I was referencing the aesthetic all those times before, and I think I finally, in my opinion, what I'm pinpointing is the cartooniness of it.
No, I fully agree, and I actually never really thought about that. Maybe that's why I feel so like I'm attracted to it so much. And I think now that you've pointed that out, and going back to like the earlier discussion of like, well, why did this take off so much and get subsequent sequels and yada yada yada. And I think obviously marketing had to do with it, and then like cartoony appeal. And then I realized that like two of my other favorite games for PS1 that are not nearly as popular as Crash Bandicoot, like not even probably a blip on anybody's radar, have the same exact elements. They're very cartoony, they have fun little dialogue, and that Looney Tune esque. And they both came out after the first Crash. They came out in the consecutive years, 97 and 98. So in 97, a game called Herc's Adventure came out.
That was done by LucasArts. Actually, we were referencing Ron Gilbert. That was, I don't think he worked on that. He was gone from LucasArts at the time, but Herc's Adventure was a LucasArts game.
Yes, it was. And I absolutely adored that game as a kid and played it all the time. And I always loved all the quick little dialogue when you're Hercules and the skeleton jumps on your neck and he keeps like trying to get you, and there's these cartoony Looney Tune expressions of Herc trying to get away from this villain, and like just these random snippets that the other like characters that you're battling would say. Like you'd hit a soldier, and when you finally would beat him, his uniform would kind of pop off, his pants would fall down, you'd see boxers with little hearts on them, and he'd scurry away. Just random shit like that. And then in like 98, this game called Blasto came out. Have you ever heard of Blasto?
I have. I actually, we were talking about demo discs before.
Hmm.
I did a demo disc stream a couple months ago, like 4 or 5 months ago now.
I remember, yeah.
And Blasto was on it. I actually played Blasto. I was not good at it, but I was pleasantly surprised by it. It was actually pretty fun.
Yeah, I loved that game. That was Phil Hartman's last voice acting job, actually, that was released like after he had passed away.
No,
And
passed away is a light way to describe what happened to him.
I didn't know how dark we wanted to get here.
How
And
fun. For those who don't know, Phil Hartman was a comedian, actor, and apparently was a graphic designer from Canada. He was on SNL. He was really funny.
he
If
voiced
you if
a
you
million
if you,
people on The Simpsons.
He was a million people on The Simpsons. If you ever remember, if you remember I know you remember this, but the motivational speaker sketch from SNL with Chris Farley, he was
Hmm.
the dad in
Yeah, he
that.
was also the neighbor in Jingle All the Way, a Christmas classic.
Yes, he was. Yes, he was. And his wife murdered him
in his sleep.
in
Yeah.
his sleep. It's so fucked up. Anyway, we can get back to happier stuff, but
Yeah, but I remember loving him from The Simpsons and his just like his, for lack of a better word, animated voice and then playing Blasto. And all three of those games have those vibes. Just unfortunately, Herc's Adventure and Blasto didn't have the marketing that Crash Bandicoot did. And probably, just the motivated developers behind it. Like they I don't even know if they would be considered indie games because obviously Lucas was behind the one, so that's far from indie, but it's just like they're so like cult classics. Like I don't know many people aside from you that would know even the existence of those games. I need more games like that in my life, so if anybody knows games like that, just give them all to me. I need wholesome things that make me giggle, but also don't.
I'll see if I can track down some in my collection just as some references. I'm curious. I'm curious now. I'm just thinking of like wholesome, goofy, cartoony games. Like
I,
if I don't know if that's like a category or like a genre of game, but if it is, we'll find it.
it is now, but like I just I don't want it to make my hair gray like Crash does, though.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, it Crash Bandicoot. I think it's just it was what Sony needed at the time, despite its difficulty.
Mhm.
It was what Sony needed at the time. It needed a mascot because the 90s were the era of the mascot platformers. That's what you
Yeah.
needed to do to sell your console, or at the very least. So it's funny because like I was talking before about how like Awesome Possum was a thing. The full name of that game that I referenced before was Awesome Possum Kicks Dr. Machino's Butt. And
Well,
the whole thing, it was supposed to be the mascot of Tengen, which that's a whole different story. Tengen was a game developer and publisher that was originally a branch of Atari, and they produced and distributed unlicensed NES games. That's a topic for a different episode for those
mhm.
who've never heard about that. I could tell you more about it off mic if you're interested, but um Tengen, that they were creating a mascot. I guess I don't know what the purpose was for them. I don't know if they were planning on releasing their own game console. I doubt it, but or just to start off something like that. But everyone was going after these mascot platformers. So Naughty Dog specifically created Crash for that reason and in the hopes of making it Sony's mascot platformer. So it was very intentional. It wasn't like this accidental thing. Sonic was intentional too, but they didn't know that making Sonic a hedgehog was going to ignite the world into like this cute animal platforming craze, which turned out. So, I mean, Crash Bandicoot capitalized on that and it created one of the most popular franchises of all time. And it helped put Sony on the map. Like, I'm not saying I'd be curious, like someone who's more informed than me, like what game could you really pin like PlayStation's popularity to in North America, at least? Like what was the game that like made it a curious, like someone who was curious about this new console coming out to like, holy shit, I need to get this console. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Um, Now, can't you play the first Crash in a scene in Uncharted? Did I make
You
that up? Or
do. Uncharted
yeah,
4. You played
okay.
in Uncharted 4, yeah.
Yeah, I thought so. I was trying to think, I'm like, what Naughty Dog game had a game within a game? I was like, it was not The Last of Us. It had to have been Uncharted.
I wonder how they got that in there because they had to get that license from Activision, right? Like, did they pay Activision to put that in their game, or because they don't own Crash Bandicoot anymore? Naughty Dog and Sony don't technically own Crash Bandicoot. So, who did like did they have to get permission or pay royalties? I don't know. That's something I didn't even think about. I wonder.
That is like such a world of things I do not understand. And
Licensing so video games are so weird with licensing because back in like the 90s and earlier nobody gave a fuck at
yeah,
all. It's not even because it's not even like they some knew and didn't care. Other most of the times people didn't know and didn't care for that reason. Funnily enough, and I know you're a big Beatles fan, this is this ties in with what I'm talking about.
For
The
sure.
game Earthbound has a lot of samples from Beatles music. So the popular theory for years is that the reason they could never re-release Earthbound was because of that. Was because there was a lot of like blatantly ripped off Beatles music in the game. Um,
Possibly.
but there's been since like games that it's been re-released a couple times now on they actually just got released for Nintendo Switch Online
Oh.
uh as of the Nintendo Direct that happened last week. This is dating our recording thing because this is coming out in April, but whatever. But it's just it's video game licensing is very strange because now they're licensed to hell and back. It's as litigated as hard as movies and music is, but back in the 90s nobody gave a fuck.
Yeah, because video games are so different from like I said earlier, like a Crash Bandicoot-esque game. Like you can't they're not even in the same league because video games now are like an immersive experience. And I'm not even talking about like things that are VR or anything of that nature, but it's like full on storylines, full on backgrounds. Like, you take a game like Red Dead Redemption or, that's like probably the biggest immersive game that I could think of where I can literally just sit and fish for 6 hours if I goddamn want to. And like that's a whole part of that game. You couldn't even fathom doing that in 96 when you're playing Crash Bandicoot collecting Wampa fruit. You know what I mean? It's just a completely different thing. So it's like I think nostalgia really helps like with these games and like why people appreciate them so much to the point where they completely and fully like remade them. But I also think like the simplicity of them is just unrivaled because as much as I love games like Red Dead where I could literally hunt and track and do a bajillion other things for hours and the game's not even close to being over, I could get that serotonin rush when I beat a level of Crash Bandicoot. There's like that closure. I think less is more in that sense, if that makes sense.
Hmm. Well, I mean, it's just a symptom of how games evolve. Like there's a you look at if you look at the sales of Mario games,
Hmm.
the moment Mario went 3D, their sales plummeted because it alienated a whole bunch of people who love games. Like there's a whole like group of gamers who aren't gamers anymore because 2D was so like you're saying, it's just easy to use. It's easy to pick up and play and understand. It doesn't take a whole lot of effort to get into one of these games.
Yeah.
The moment games went 3D, it's significantly more challenging. There's a lot more to these games than there was before.
Yeah.
Some people went along for the ride, a lot of others didn't. And I think with Crash Bandicoot, to kind of start wrapping this up,
Hmm.
with Crash Bandicoot, I think it's such a simplistic game, but it is so relentlessly difficult at the same
Yeah.
time. It's a bizarre combination of like, this is a really good game, but don't play past like the fifth level. Like, don't play past the first boss because you're going to like lose your mind.
Absolutely.
It's very simple. But it's super fun still. It's still satisfying. Like when I was playing it again on stream, I was like, this is still fun to me. And I don't have nostalgia I mean, I have nostalgia in the sense that I have memories, but like I don't look at Crash Bandicoot and be like, oh man, I loved when I played that game as a kid. I liked it, but I don't have those warm, fuzzy nostalgia feelings for it. I just have memories of it.
Yeah.
And it's still fun. Like I still enjoyed, even when I was getting mad at the Road to Nowhere, it's still a fun game. It's definitely worth checking out for those who have not played it. Erika, any final thoughts on Crash Bandicoot?
No, I think you hit the nail on the head with that. I mean, this, like I said earlier, this is like my least favorite one of the. I'm similar. I just have memories of this one. My true blue nostalgia comes in definitely with the second one more so, but it is a great game. At the end of the day, it is a great game. It's challenging, really challenging, sometimes unenjoyably challenging, but like I said earlier, when I completed that, the high road level or whatever it was called, and like laying on my floor in like just ecstasy of the fact that I freaking beat that shit. That's the effect that that game has on you. So like while you get frustrated and rage and all this other stuff, like you get that sense of accomplishment. Like I freaking worked for that super hard. I lost 75 lives to get to this point and I did it. It's a great game. I love it. I love Crash Bandicoot. End scene.
Well, I'm definitely going to have you back for Crash 2, and I'll hopefully be playing. I mean, do I have Crash 2? I don't know
Damn
if I
well,
have Crash 2. I should. I'm going to
someone
double
needs
check
to buy
now.
the
I know
Insane
I have the third one
Trilogy.
for damn sure, but I don't know if I have the second one physically, at least. I could probably borrow the Insane Trilogy from my brother or something like that. But
Yeah.
yeah, so that will do it for this episode on the first Crash Bandicoot game. Erika, thank you so much for joining me. It's been a while since we got to podcast together, so this was a
I
shitload of fun.
know. Thank you, sir, for having me.
Where can the good people find you online?
Oh, good Lord, everywhere. So I co-host a podcast called Monster Madness. We talk about a bunch of horror movies, stuff like that. I do have a true crime podcast. It's kind of quiet nowadays, but you can listen to older episodes. Those are still online. I also produce
Well, that's the Apex and the Abyss. You should probably name that.
Yeah, I should. I forgot to even name it. I forgot it's been that long. It's called The Apex and the Abyss. I am also a producer, and I don't know, by this time this comes out, I might have guest hosted on it every once in a while, a new show called Kane and Matt Save the World. I can't really describe that show. The name kind of says it all. Talk about food. I have hot takes sometimes. I'm all over the internet. I'm on this show every once in a while. Just Google my name, Erika Gwynn, with a K. You'll find me somewhere.
I thought you were talking about your last name for a second. Like, your last name doesn't have a K in it.
It's silent.
It's a silent K.
Yeah.
As usual for me, you can follow me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at StillLoadingPod on all of them. If you want to email me, you can email me stillloadingcontact@gmail.com. If you want to support the show, you can do that in a few ways. You can give it a 5-star rating or review on Apple Podcasts. That helps more people find the show, and it gives me nice, warm, fuzzy feelings. And if you want to support the show monetarily for $1, you can go to patreon.com/stillloadingpod. For $1 a month, you'll get all the episodes a few days early, as well at a higher bit rate and access to a patron exclusive Discord. Or for $5 a month, you'll get all of that plus 2 extra bonus episodes. Some bonus episode topics include things like retro magazine reviews, where I look through my smallish collection of old video game magazines and I talk about the weird shit that I find in there, maybe some of the ads, some of the goofy things that I come across, or maybe I'll do episodes on very specific aspects of game history. Like I did an episode about how back during like the 70s and early 80s, Atari would publish their own games on their competitors' consoles, and I thought that was really fucking weird, so I talked about it. Stuff like that. So patreon.com/stillloadingpod. But the most important shout out is the Bit by Bit Foundation. The Bit by Bit Foundation is a nonprofit organization whose mission is to put video games and video game consoles in the hands of kids receiving inpatient care in hospitals. So if you want to go support them, go to bitbybitfoundation.org and consider donating. And that will do it for this episode of Still Loading. Erika, thank you once again for joining me.
Thank you. Thank you.
And I will see you all next time.